What? You thought I was finished with this? Ha! Not by a long shot, my friend. When I set my mind on something, you better be damn sure I'm gonna see it through. I said I was gonna cover the entirety of the GumBomb from last year, and I'm going to do it. I don't care if it has been 1 year since that GumBomb. When the one and only C.R. Martin makes a promise, the one and only C.R. Martin keeps that promise. That was different, okay? So picking up from where we left off, if I'm not mistaken, I'm currently up to the 4th week of the GumBomb event. Let's see, what have we got today? Well, I'm happy that I'm talking about Gumball again, but are these it? Surely this can't be the show's best foot forward. Alright, let's get cracking. The first episode of GumBomb Week 4 is the grades. Gumball is sent back to kindergarten after a discovery has been made that his grade point average has been invalidated. What appears to be a triumph for Miss Simeon at first eventually turns to a nightmare when she learns that her class is 1 student short, and if she doesn't get Gumball back come Friday, she loses her job. And now it's up to her to get Gumball back to her class by any means necessary. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't very fond of this episode the first time I watched it, and the reason why is because I thought it fell back on Season 1's more annoying habits, namely characterizing Gumball as cripplingly stupid and making him the cosmic punching bag that gets all the rotten luck in the world. While the episode does show these undesirable traits, for the most part, I went into this episode with a completely wrong mindset. I was so flabbergasted that these qualities of Season 1 that I hated so much reared their ugly heads this far into the series' broadcast run. So much so that I was inwardly cringing and outwardly yelling at the characters to get their shit together and ignored whatever positive qualities it had. After a second viewing of the episode, with a much better mindset at that, it wasn't all that bad anymore. I'll even say that it's a pretty decent episode. What sets it apart from your typical Season 1 episode with Gumball as the idiotic punching bag are a few things. For one, it actually gives Gumball a break. The situations he finds himself in turn a 180 in his favor, and they never go overboard with punishing him, which is what Season 1 is generally guilty of. For another, Gumball and Miss Simeon have an interesting chemistry that, like the scenarios that Gumball is put in, also turns a 180 in his favor. Anyone who isn't too fond of Miss Simeon will feel cathartic when they see her at the mercy of her student and his constant bumbling, as exaggerated as they may be. Lastly, the two of them working together in general is always a recipe for them to step outside of their comfort zone, given the typical one-sided animosity between them. And this sort of opposites attract principle is automatically interesting, no matter how many times it's been explored in fiction. As for the individual gags, some of them are surprisingly well done. I thought the one where Miss Simeon uses the stone carvings as her means of cheating through the 8th grade was particularly clever.
What the what right now?
I scribbled the answers on the cave wall.
Oh, so that's what cave paintings are.
So no, it turns out that I don't hate the grades as much as I thought I did. I enjoyed it enough the second time around to give it an ultimate score of 3 out of 5. I can't give it more points because the fallbacks to Season 1's worst qualities are still there, and they do hold the episode back, but the better parts of the episode prevent it from getting a failing score. It's funny how many 180s this episode pulls, especially since my opinion of it has turned a 180 itself. The same cannot be said for the next episode, the diet. Gumball and Darwin help Richard out with his new diet.
The way of my car!
That's right, buddy. Honk if you think I'm tongue.
I said, Gumball and Darwin help Richard out with his new diet.
I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to these babies.
He updates his profile picture every 5 seconds. We can work it out from that. See? Look at those puppies.
I don't want to see that. Oh, not what I expected.
Oh, so it's gonna be like that, huh? Okay, fine, whatever. I hate to say it, but we've got another stinker on our hands, folks. The first half isn't anything too exciting. It's just more Richard is fat humor that doesn't try to be anything inventive or creative. Not the most stimulating thing you'll ever see on TV, but nothing harmful. The whole Synth-Rock montage gag kinda works. Well, as much as the writers could make it work. And that's about it. Had the whole episode been like this, and with even the slightest tweaks in the plot to keep it from being a monumental waste of time, I would have been fine with it and called it a day. Then the second half happens. Dear God, that idiotic second half. I don't think a title of an episode from the show has ever misled us since The Fridge back in Season 2 or several Season 1 episodes. It's as if the script had some kind of identity crisis and just collapsed on itself because of it. Actually, come to think of it, a better comparison I can make is with Disney's Chicken Little from 2005 and the Digimon movie from 2000. This episode and those movies have the misfortune of having two separate unrelated plots, or in the case of the Digimon movie, three separate unrelated plots welded together without rhyme or reason. Obviously, the diet doesn't reach the levels of catastrophe that either of those movies did, but that's like saying that burning your tongue with a waffle iron is better than permanently damaging your eye with a laser pointer. They're both bad, even if one is objectively better or worse than the other. When you spend a good 2 to 3 minutes creating your setup, you had better stick with that setup from start to finish. Otherwise, you'd be wasting both the audience's time and a potentially interesting premise if it turns out that the one you instead opted with doesn't hold a candle to your initial idea. To be at least somewhat fair on the episode, Richard's pursuit for a better lifestyle and his vanity from his muscle gain can easily be tied together so that there's at least a degree of cohesion between both concepts. The problem, however, is that the connections the episode makes are very loose, bordering on non-existent. The second half feels like such a strong departure from the first half that the episode ultimately comes off as what I said it does. Two different ideas slapped together without much of a thought process. I'd like to say that the second half had something that could save it, but I can't. Not when you have the characters taking selfies and announcing that they're taking selfies without the least bit of shame in their system.
That means he's at the pet store!
Oh, now he's at the nursery.
It's quite alright. I get this all the time. I'm ready for you to take my picture. Don't worry. I've got this.
You're taking this too far! You've become vain! Remember what's important to you!
Starting to think that selfies are as bad an idea as YOLO was. What? You think I'm kidding? Regarding the whole selfie nonsense in the episode, I implied in my first impressions of DuckTales 2017 that shoehorning in elements of pop culture into a plot just for the sake of it never works out. By trying so hard to be relevant with the trends of the present, you end up becoming dated and irrelevant in the long run. Gumball has integrated pop culture and present-day trends into its episodes in the past, and these episodes succeeded because these elements were part of the narrative as opposed to being invasive towards it. The show is more or less built on that, and I'm groaning on the inside from seeing this episode try to stoop to the lowest common denominator. Gumball, stop. Just stop. You're better than this. Unfortunately, The Diet is not an episode that I can give a pass. A 2 out of 5 is not a pass, and the only reason why I didn't score it lower than a 2 is because the problems it has are easily fixable. And the show is aware of any wrongs it may have committed and admirably seeks to rectify them at every chance it gets. But as for right now, it gets the score it gets. I won't be revisiting this episode outside of review purposes. I just don't have the stomach for it. With that episode done, let's move on before I lose my appetite. Thankfully, episode 3 of GumBomb Week 4, The Sorcerer, is just the respite we need. Lamenting his lack of special qualities or talents, Gumball, as per his brother's suggestion, decides to search for a special quality or talent or develop his own. To that end, he approaches Mrs. Jotunheim so that she may teach him everything about magic. This is a peculiar one to me. There were aspects of the episode that I willingly welcome, but they coexist with aspects that leave me scratching my head. First and foremost, I like the fact that Gumball is motivated by a desire to amount to so much more than what he typically is. One of Gumball's most admirable qualities is his determination. When he sets his mind on something, there's nothing he won't do to achieve his goal. Now, I know that this character trait can be and has been used poorly, even by the show itself, resulting in some obnoxious characterization, but it's also one of those traits that, when used properly, acts as a catalyst for a character's other positive traits and empathetic flaws. This episode may not be a shining example of this, but it does the job well enough that I can't fault it too much. The nods to magic-themed works of the past are likewise not the best to have come from the show, but they fit right at home with the other themes of the episode and get a chortle or two from anyone familiar with them. For example, Fantasia is one of my favorite films in the Disney animated canon, and the slight nod to The Sorcerer's Apprentice was amusing to me. While I liked those aspects of the episode, the other aspects sort of confused me. On the one hand, I thought it was clever and funny that the episode likens magic to the internet.
What's next? What? You only have the demo version of my powers. Every spell you cast has a watermark.
You think you can troll a troll? You got a lot to learn.
I know. I always thought trolls were like those little porcelain guys on the lawn.
That's nose. You know that's nose.
Both are phenomena that possess limitless potential. Potential that humans have tapped into and continue to tap into. Sometimes for good, sometimes for bad. Maybe the episode has some sort of subtext that states that the internet is itself a form of magic because we as humans, ever so curious, are mystified and amazed by what the internet is capable of, even after having used it ourselves. I don't know. That's just my interpretation of it. On the other hand, why are these parallels being drawn? It's not like the internet and modern technology were prominent elements in this episode. It's not like Gumball and Darwin were busying themselves with their mobile devices like everybody does nowadays. Wouldn't it make more sense if there were scenes in the episode where, say, the brothers were shown to be using magic wands to cast spells, but in reality were actually using their phones to do the most mundane yet functional task? I mean, we did get one scene with that kind of subversion in this episode, so what's stopping it from going all out? At the end of the day, it makes the episode seem like it could have had more meat to it. It followed through on a lot of the concept while not following through on the remaining parts. It pretty much played it safe, which is a fine mentality to have for an episode within the standard fare, but not really a mentality to have for the more ambitious endeavors. The Sorcerer is a 3 out of 5 for being an entertaining, if inconsequential, and somewhat half-baked ride. And again, there's no harm in playing to your strengths, just don't be complacent with those strengths though. Now, I'd love to tell you that the week ends on a high note, but oh, I think I cracked a rib there. Give me a sec. Alright, I'm cool. Good news is, my ribs are still intact. Bad news is, well, 2 words. The X. Sweet baby Jesus in a manger, I hate this episode. Hands down the worst episode from the whole GumBomb event. I've been waiting for the longest time to kick this episode's ass, and now that I have a chance to do that, the gloves are coming off. Gumball learns that his former sworn enemy, Rob, has found someone else to direct his animosity towards. Ever the jealous, clingy, and petty boy he is, Gumball does everything in his power to rekindle the flames of hatred between them. Because all's fair in hate and war? Don't worry, I'm confused too. Though that will be the least of this episode's problems, because it has many. I should first elaborate that yes, I was one of the people who assumed and feared that the premise was about a potential breakup between Gumball and Penny. Seeing how much I love those two as a couple, I abhorred the idea. Luckily, such wasn't the case. Not as luckily, this was. First of all, why in the fuck does Gumball give this much of a shit about Rob in the first place? Last time I checked, he didn't even know what his name was, he abandoned him in the void, and they were killing each other over a flippin' remote. If this is supposed to be a parody of the jealous, clingy ex-character archetype, would it have been too much to ask to not go with the most obvious approach and just substitute hatred for romance? Second, did Gumball really have to treat his girlfriend like trash? Did we really need to see 3 to 6 unamusing scenes that reduced Penny to a heavily discounted version of Meg Griffin? Third, why did the fucking episode end the way it did? Why? Why? Okay, time out. I'm losing my temper again. Let me get it back, and then I'll continue. Alright, all better. Anyway, the X. My hatred for this episode comes from a few things. Number 1, as I said, Gumball is horrendously written here. I know what type of character he is, or what type of character he can be. He can be self-centered, hedonistic, pompous, cynical, and a bunch of other traits that don't befit a hero. But if a character exhibits some familiar traits while neglecting their other traits, specifically the ones that are supposed to even them out as a person and keep them from being unlikable, you know that something is wrong. For anyone who feeds me the argument that it's who they are, I want you to think about this question. If you have a friend in your circle who's the obnoxious, annoying prankster who deep down cares for you and you care for in return, but one day starts making these cynical, sarcastic, and even hurtful cracks that he or she normally doesn't make, and doesn't show any signs of stopping these cracks, would you bat an eye and raise an eyebrow, suspecting that maybe, just maybe, something might be bothering him or her? I'm just saying, because that's what I did regarding Gumball in this episode. Okay, yes, his ceaseless obsession with Rob throughout the episode is somewhat within his character, but that is the only trait of his that is shown in the episode. It makes his overall depiction here a huge departure from his previous depictions, especially in the episodes within the Rob and the Void story arc, and especially in the disaster in the rerun. Just as Gumball in this episode and this episode's plot function at the expense of all the nuances that make Gumball, well, Gumball, it also comes at the expense of Penny. I might have counted 3, 4, 5, or even 6 scenes where she was treated like a throwaway punchline that's recycled over and over again, like a piece of tissue you already blew your nose into, but still used to wipe a ketchup stain in your cheek. I really didn't need to see her birthday ruined by Gumball's incessant rambling about Rob.
And then Rob tried to blow up the dam, and then he said, "I am your nemesis," but in a cool British accent that I actually gave him.
Nor did I need to see her get spooked by Alan trapped in her locker at the end of the episode as part of not one, but 2 unfunny jokes.
Thank goodness, I couldn't breathe in there.
Yeah, I couldn't find any balloons either. So it looks like you made up with your nemesis too.
What do you mean?
The hat?
He's got me!
As for Rob, the guy is no better. He meanders in the episode for majority of it. His declaring of Banana Joe as his new nemesis makes absolutely no sense. His motivations are weak and flimsy, and it's a shame. His one-note half-baked characterization is only marginally better than Gumball though, so I guess he has that going for him. I wasn't expecting this episode to pick up from where the disaster and the rerun left off, but I could have at least had the good sense to respect what was unraveled during those episodes. Speaking of, though I didn't expect this to be any kind of continuation, I also didn't expect it to profane the developments in those 2 episodes with that stupid climax!
In fact, I think I really
Say it.
hate you!
Yeah, I don't know who would facepalm harder. Whitney Houston because her rendition of the song being parodied is the most famous by far, or Dolly Parton because she's the original artist who wrote the song. One thing's for sure though, they won't be facepalming harder than I did. Some of you might call me out for being too hard on this episode, but I don't think I'm being hard enough. Gumball, as in the show, has proven many times that a comedy show such as itself does not need to be confined to the status quo, and that there are intrinsic dangers in rigidly following the status quo. It's also proven that it's not only okay to go beyond the status quo, but also encouraged. It's proven this through its own instances where it stood on its own 2 feet, not just as a comedy, but as an ornate, special, and memorable piece of animation. The resolution, if you can even call it that, is a slap in the face to one of the show's most poignant story arcs, and especially its dramatic, emotionally heavy, and groundbreaking climaxes. Matter of fact, this entire episode is one gigantic, unabashed, unapologetic slap in the face. For its complete abandon of many episodes worth of build-up, for its lack of integrity with respect to character and narrative, the X is a 1.5 out of 5. I really hate to do this to my favorite modern-day animated series, and easily one of my all-time favorite animated series, but this episode infuriated me. I'm not gonna let my bias in favor of the show affect my better judgment. I love this show to death, but I know a horrendous episode when I see it. The only reason my score is half a point higher than it should be is because I'm still entertained by the story arc with Rob and the Void. And if there's one thing I can say about Gumball, it acknowledges any mistakes it's made and knows how to rectify them. If the show can fix catastrophes like the fridge and the hero, then they can fix this catastrophe too. Of course, I'm not asking for a full-on retcon. The writers just have to play their cards right should they continue with this, when they continue with this. But a catastrophe is still a catastrophe, and while the damage may be fixed over time, the scars will remain. And those 3 episodes, the fridge, the hero, and this one, are scars that run deep and won't go away. That felt good. Not just giving that last episode a well-deserved ass-kicking, but talking about Gumball again. Hell, being a YouTuber again. My laptop's back, my streams throughout February were a smashing success, and I'm officially back in the game. And I'm so happy. The road ahead will be filled with surprises, excitement, and challenges aplenty, and I welcome them. 2018 has just started. There's still much for me to do, and I can't wait. But first, the final week of GumBomb February 2017. This has been a long time coming, and I'm going to end it with a bang.